All right. That moves us to item 17 on the agenda, CMTA Guaranteed Energy Savings Contractor Update.
At this time, I'll turn it over to our Director of Operations, Mr. Wiseman.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the board, Dr. Ross, members of the community. Thank you. I have some exciting news. I want to give CMTA a chance to talk about the energy savings program that they put together over the summer for Dutch Fork Elementary and Irmo High School. And so I would like to introduce you to Sal Locke from CMTA.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for having me. Thank you for your time. I'd like to thank, not only my team, but Dave and Alan Knotts were a huge part of making this a success. And these are like my favorite days. This is why I get up every day, is coming and tell the story of what we did. And I'm really passionate about what we do. So I'll jump right into it. I'm not going to bore you with 10 minutes about who we are, but I'll remind you of why we were selected to do this project. And then I'll talk about what you got and where we're at with it. So just briefly starting with who we are, we're a nationally recognized firm for our energy efficient schools. We designed the first zero energy school, which means that school produced as much energy as it consumed, which meant that it was a very efficient school. We've literally written the book on how to design an efficient school, and that's kind of what led us into this industry and why I believe you all selected us about 1.5 years ago to do this project at these two schools. So what did you all get? You got a lot at 2 of your facilities focusing on scope of work that saved energy. You all entered into a 5-year energy savings program with us where we have skin in the game to give you a guaranteed energy savings year after year. So starting with Dutch Fork Elementary, I'm a real nerd about videography, so I record a lot of my stuff because I love what I do. So starting with the HVAC renovation at Dutch Fork, there was 42 rooftop units that we touched. The ones in red we did not touch just because we decided, they're from 2010, didn't make sense to replace those. But all the other ones were at the end of their life, so we went ahead and replaced those. It was a very hectic summer, and that's where Dave and his team helped us get this completed. Coordinated a lot. We dealt with a lot of equipment lead time issues. A lot had to happen at the end of that week, and in fact, I definitely broke my record for the number of nights I've spent outside of my home for work. But learned a lot this summer, and we got it done, and we could not have done it without you all's help with the cleaning afterwards, the school helping us coordinate everything. So it was a really good partnership to get that completed. But Dutch Fork also got a HVAC control system, which is what majority of our savings are going to come from, is how we control the HVAC system. And in addition, that no-brainer energy saver is those LED lights. So we implemented LED lights everywhere at that school. And you also got a new roof at the gym, which was aging, and we were able to replace that roof into a pretty new white roof there that you see. Dutch Fork also got a solar carport, which was the first one that my company actually did. We typically do roof-mounted panels, but with the region that you all are in, we kind of ran into an obstacle here during design that we were able to resolve even after we had a contract with you guys at no cost to you all, just because of the region that we're in. Something was discovered, and we decided to install that solar carport that we promised and delivered, and it turned out great. You should drive out there and look at it because it's honestly pretty impressive. I've seen a lot out in LA, and this one is a step above that just because of the region that you're in. It has to be very structurally sound, so it looks really good, and it's going to produce some energy savings for that school, as well as an initiative that you all are taking to do solar at your schools. And I'll circle back about the solar later on in the presentation. Dutch Fork also got 73 new windows, which obviously helps with energy efficiency, and they needed to be replaced. They really were. At Irmo High School is a little bit of a simpler scope of work. We were specifically focused on that activities building that's going to remain and we tackled the HVAC there had ranged in age anywhere from 2019 to 2001, and those units in blue are the ones that we tackled and replaced one for one. We did this over a single week, believe it or not. We were able to set those units in a single week, and that's a testament to Jason sitting back there to coordinate everybody to be on site to get her done. And you'll get a sneak peek of the solar there as well. But, all of this is going to continue to generate energy savings, but a key factor of that Irmo High School is reusing the existing infrastructure that you had and optimize it. So you had infrastructure of HVAC control systems, but we're coming in and optimizing how that system operates to run it more efficiently with efficient sequences. And again, the no-brainer energy saver, the LED lights throughout that school. The school looks great, and even the practice gym looks really good as well. And my favorite piece of this project was being able to implement a really large solar array at this high school with a newer roof that was in place. We were able to add this solar array to that roof, which looks great, and it's going to generate a substantial amount of savings for the district. And I'll circle back about solar at the end of my presentations, but to remind you all of why a guaranteed energy savings contract was used to procure this part of this renovation. And I could sit here and obviously I do this for a living, but to me it's part of a no-brainer for school districts because it generates a revenue path to find the money to do projects like this. It addresses existing infrastructure that's aging. I know sometimes we focus on new buildings, but we have to keep up with the buildings that we have and be more energy efficient at those buildings. And sometimes you could do so at a more dollar-friendly way than you would a brand new building. And it's also more earth-friendly. And that one key aspect of this procurement method is that the competitive bidding process stops when you select the energy savings contract provider, being CMTA. So what that means is that you get to handpick, select your preferred contractors that you want to work with after you select a energy savings contract provider like CMTA, which essentially brings more value into your schools because you have a little bit more control into who's doing the work at your schools. And that doesn't mean that you have to pick that low bid with a contractor you're not familiar with. So it allows you to have more control of your construction. And it offers a turnkey project with no change orders. You can ask Alan and Dave what the Office of School Facilities was found at Dutch Fork. That school was very old. When you take a ceiling down, you open up yourself to a lot of critique from a code perspective, and there was no change orders that were handed over. We found a lot. Trust me, we did. But that's an advantage of doing a project through us is that no change order process. And another one which I learned a lot through this summer was what it was like to tackle the Office of School Facilities. It was definitely a team effort. A lot of meetings, a lot of can we work this out? Let's figure it out, what we need to do in a timely manner. And it was a huge effort between the third-party inspector and CMTA, along with Dave and Alan, to get this completed. Because honestly, there was some talks that we weren't going to open school on time, and that just was not something I was going to let happen. Our team was not going to let that happen, and we worked together to figure that out. And it was a good learning lesson from all of us, and we got through it together to implement this project at a very old school. And in the end, which I'll close off with, is the guaranteed energy savings that I'm going to highlight here at the end. So, as I mentioned, you all entered into the 5-year contract with us, where over that term of that contract, you will realize at the bare minimum $722,000 in savings. Our savings are always met and often beaten by 10 to 20%, to be honest. So you all will get more than these funds. And in fact, throughout the presentation, I mentioned I'll circle back to the solar piece of it. So for one, for doing the LED lights and the HVAC, you all received an automatic rebate that we applied for you all. That's going to go directly into you all's pocket. It's already in your pocket, actually. And our guarantee technically doesn't start being measured until we're done with the work, right? Like, we're not going to measure savings until we're done. Now we're almost done here in the next month, and we're going to start tracking the utility bills to see what we saved to compare it to this $140,000 number next year. Well, I'll come back and tell y'all that we did beat it. But that $53,000 rebate automatically contributes to that first year cost savings, which, you know, for this year, I only have to hit $86,000 in rebates. And one thing that is incredibly lucky as well, not sure how familiar you are with the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed late last year. It's an incredible amount of money that the federal government passed to basically incentivize school districts to implement energy efficient designs in geothermal and also renewables like solar. They're basically giving you a 30% coupon off, especially for solar and geothermal. So this is also new that the paperwork's now being put out, but in essence, when you did that solar, you made that decision to implement that solar array system because it was financially advantageous for you all to do it. Well, now, after making that good decision to do it, you're going to get 30% back of that cost, and that could be anywhere, depending on the fees of the consultant that you all hire that will help you find. It could be anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000 that you all would get back just for doing that solar at those two schools, which, you know, it's like icing on top of the cake. A cherry on top of the icing on top of the cake. Like, is going to be very substantial, and to me, it's like I've already met half of my savings, and I haven't even started measuring things. So it's going to help me sleep at night, and it's going to be a very financially positive project that you all took on with us, and I'm very happy to sit here and tell you all about it, and we'll certainly work with your team to get that basically rebate, direct payment that the Inflation Reduction Act offers, and that you may consider, knowing that your school district does have an opportunity to do solar elsewhere, to consider adding solar elsewhere in a financially positive way. So that's what the project savings are going to be, to give you an update on where things are. The solar array, I'm actually here to meet with the utility company tomorrow to turn it on and start producing power at both sites. And the building automation system, we've installed all the hardware, and we're about a 2.5 month period to closing out what I call commissioning, making sure that what we designed is implemented correctly. So that should be nearly finished before the summer. So that's where the project is, and the savings will start to accumulate when we close this out. So that's all I have, and if you have any questions.
Does anyone have any questions? Mr. Scully.
Yeah, and I guess really for Irmo High School with the solar, how much energy does that generate?
Let me just calculate it. It's 330 kW savings, so that's 412,000 kilowatt hours a year, which is roughly $33,000 a year.
Do we have an agreement with the power company to get a credit for that?
You do, yeah. And we ran a financial model of whether it made sense or not, and worked that into our calculations to see what the simple payback period was for that building.
What's the payback? I'm sorry.
The payback off the top of my head is going to be tough, but it was less than 18 years. And you can quote me on that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other, Mr. Satterfield?
Yeah, I had two questions. Probably one is for Mr. Wiseman, but this one's for you. The solar panels and all, the maintenance, I know there's maintenance involved, and how does that work?
So the maintenance of it's really non-existent after the first year. So there's two components, right? You've got your solar panels and you've got your inverter, which changes the power from the solar that you can use in your building. In that first year, if that solar inverter doesn't go out, it's typically going to be fine for the life cycle of it, because there's not a whole lot of moving parts. It's just, but you actually have a 5-year maintenance contract with us where we'll take care of that solar. If something goes down, we'll commission it. And so after that solar is on for that 5 years, you're really not going to have to take care of it as far as a maintenance standpoint.
Okay. And my second question was, with the HVAC systems that you put in, is there a maintenance contract with that as well? Or are we responsible, or do you give us, in order to say, we can guarantee you this amount of money that you're going to save, but you have to follow this schedule and so forth?
We come to an agreement on what that schedule is, what the set points are, to help us guide into, and those are there to not be a set rule. Those are there to protect us. You know, typically we'll work with our existing clients to figure out, you know, what makes sense for that specific school. And again, it's to protect us if we're dealing with an unreasonable client that wants to operate their buildings 24/7. That we have something to look back on onto what we agreed upon.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
But to answer your other question, no, we did not include a maintenance contract because we're not in the business of selling maintenance contracts because we have a view on that, but something we can offer in the future.
I know we have a lot of very old HVAC systems up on those roofs, so I was just curious.
First of all, I promise not to be an annoying guy that enters into a contract that doesn't follow up with what Sal's done. But him and Jason back there, I tell you what, for my first project walking in, you may not know it, but I was kind of scared about that whole project. Every time I talked to Sal, it was like learning new things from smoke detectors or fire detectors in the ductworks to having to reconfigure the solar panels there at Dutch Fork Elementary. But they gave me a lot of confidence. They gave me a lot of guidance. Our third-party inspector was in there. OSF was coming down, giving us training so we could make sure we met their standards. It was a very interesting project to start the year out. I think Dr. Ross was down there about a week before the school started and said, "You sure you're going to pull this off?" So Sal was down there one night cleaning away, pushing the mop, running the dust rag. The custodials kicked in. The Dutch Fork Elementary staff was just amazing, allowing us to do a little flexibility and getting them into the building. So it was a lot of people pulling this together, but thank you for your support. Jason, I tell you what, I can't thank you enough. He's the guy on the ground pushing everybody to get everything done. Like I said, the solar parking lot, not only is it an advantage to us, but to me, the kids can see it from the playground. You know, so that's part of their educational process. And I know that you're planning to come down and give a class to the kids about that project. So excellent work. We got this one almost finished, and I'll be glad to finish it up and go on to something new. So again, thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Scully, did you have another question?
Yeah, and this is either probably for Mr. Wiseman. The inverters on a solar system are really the largest replacement cost from a maintenance standpoint that we're going to have. The panels and the racking and all of that. The panels you can get pretty cheap, and the inverters are actually it's pretty significant replacement cost. Typically, you need to within 10 to 15 years. Did you guys consider that or build up any kind of reserve or kind of plan for that in the proposal? And did you consider that in the projection model?
So I'll speak for them. We were dealing with a different administration where those decisions were made. So the decision was made to do a 5-year contract where we take care of the maintenance program. But after that, it would be up to the school district to replace that inverter, to replace those panels when the warranty on those would not cover the replacement of them.
Yeah, and so just FYI, I mean, it's something that you are going to want to keep on your, it's a steep cost. It's worth it. I'd still do it. I work in energy with my job, so
If you're comparing apples to apples, like one rooftop unit replacement at one classroom, that would be the cost of 2 inverters today, and you've got 6 in the district. So if you think of it, it's like the cost that you're referring to for those inverters, which is, you know, those things that will burn up in about 15 years, the cost it's like replacing 3 or 4 rooftop units. So it's not substantial in a district of this size.
Yeah, and it's a smaller project, so, and I typically see it on a utility scale, but with Irmo being, Spring Hill, the Dutch Fork Elementary wasn't large enough, but it's something that you do want to kind of keep in mind because it's more substantial than you think. But if we get it as long as it was considered in the projection payback, we're going to save the money and it's worth it. Yep.
Any additional questions? Ms. Barnhart?
Not necessarily a question, but this presentation was awesome. Did you say you did the video? That's really cool to be able to see that. I love that, and I love that the parking solar thing. That's really cool. I could see where that could be implemented in a bunch of schools as well. So I just want to say thank you to you and your team, everybody that's worked on it, because it looks fantastic, and y'all did a really good job. So thank you.
It was a cool presentation. Thank you very much. All right, anyone else? All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. And we can get a bus under that. We checked on that before.
You
we
can get a
built it,
bus
so
under that?
That was one of the stipulations, make sure we can park a bus under there.
All right.
Again, they were great to work with. It was a little bit scary at first, but we got through it. We learned a lot. OSF was a big supporter of ours, so thanks for everybody who pulled that together, Dutch Fork Elementary especially.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. All right. All right. So that moves us on to 18, under our discussion agenda, the discussion of proposed revisions to the 2016-2021 capital projects.
And I'm hoping this is my good news night. Like I said, CMTA was an awesome project, and I want to come back and talk to you about the 2016-2021 proposals for renovation of, or revision of capital projects. I want to talk to you about some of the things that we've completed. Some of this was before my time, before Alan's time, but I think we just owe an honorable mention to make sure you understand that we are moving forward with a lot of these capital projects to deal with some of the issues across the district. So these are some of the things that we've completed in the last probably year and a half. A lot of moving parts on those. Some of the things that you'll see some pictures of were a little bit over the budget. Last time you approved us to go over the budget with the capital monies. The big ones was Dutch Fork High School track, the ADA ramps at Spring Hill, and Seven Oaks. So all of those are completed with just for the final topping on the Dutch Fork track, and I'll talk about that here in just a second. So this is the Dutch Fork track in addition to the turf that we put down this summer. We had to go back and do some additional digging and laying of gravel and stuff to make sure that the holes that were there that we didn't know when we first took off the top layer, that we could fill those so we're not having to go back every couple of years and address this issue. So they went down, I want to say 4 inches. I'm not sure exactly the inch, but they milled everything down to as far as they could go. Put the gravel back in there, packed it, did some testing all around the track, and just did an excellent job in putting it back to a very good standard. It finishes curing at the end of this month, and then we'll just put the top layer down here in the near future. But they took care of a lot of other issues. If you look at the top right-hand corner picture, that's the driveway coming from the top of the parking lot down into the track. What was really happening as you bring equipment down there, it was bottoming out and causing some drainage issues, causing some water issues. So while they were doing that, we asked them to go back in there and make sure that that was more sound for us. Of course, they've done the long jump track and the track as itself, and it's beautiful from the stands. And once we get the yellow color on there, it'll look good. I was only kidding. It's green. Green? Gray. So it'll look really good from the stadium. So we got that done. We're on track with the cost that you approved us to proceed with. So a couple of the other things, some of the things that we just recently completed was just the upgrades to Oak Point Elementary as far as the landscaping. It'll look a lot different, obviously, as the summer progresses, so we're excited about seeing how that turns out. Some of the furniture at Crossroads Intermediate. These are the two projects. This is Seven Oaks Elementary. The one on the left is before we actually got the rails in there, but as you can see, that's a long ramp to bring the children down safely and all the way into the playground. So we've met ADA requirements on that. They were seeding the grass, I think, when I took these pictures the other day, so we're expecting the rest of that to be green here in the near future. And this is the one at Spring Hill. It's probably even further as far as the distance of the ramps. Not only do we put some additional some steps in there, but we also got the ramps in there. So again, we're in ADA compliant. That was a pretty good project. We got the rails up here recently, so we've got those two things off the checklist. I was real pleased with that. This is something we actually did a test in our office building today, or actually we had these installed at our building, and we're still working out. This is the alarm system. The timing, that's actually the wrong picture on the far left. I didn't know what the sensor looked like, and apparently that's not it. But they pointed it out to me today. But we did some tests, and it was amazing. From the time I opened the door to the time the alarm went off, I got a text within 5 seconds. So we're seeing just a number of different applications for that. When they turned it on, I think I've got 25 texts in less than a minute because we were holding the door open and testing it out. So it's going to be great as we go forward with putting these into the schools and the exterior doors. We're looking at hopefully this summer, if not during spring break, to start doing about 50 at a time. The vendor that we have, fortunately, is on state contract, so that's going to save us some money. We don't have to go out to bid on all that. They just got to get all the parts in, a little at a time. So we're looking at doing at least 50 to start out. We'll start identifying the schools. But when we go into the school, we want to make sure that, what other projects we've got going on, we're not interfering with that. But we want to do one school at a time until we get those 50 installed somewhere and then go on from there. So we're excited about getting that. It's a good system. And the good thing is it ties in to our card readers. So we've got one company we can go to with our card readers and to the alarm system. So we're excited about that. What I like to do is some of this you'll see up there on the screen. There's some leftovers monies from the project that we originally talked about, some other projects throughout the school year. And then there's some additional monies that we're going to ask you to allow us to reallocate that money, because I just think that with some of the things coming forward in the bond referendum, we'll be able to tackle that as a project for that particular school, instead of putting some money into a school and then having to go back out and find out it wasn't a good fit when we're going to do some additional work in that school. So that's going to kind of tie into the 5-year plan. So those are the things that I'd ask that you allow us to reallocate so that we can go back into finishing or identifying all the installation for the interior alarms. We just got our first 2 schematics for the first 2 vestibules. We had a meeting with Mosley Architect and asked them to kind of redesign some of these projects so that, again, if we're going into a school and touching it during a bond referendum or a remodeling, we're not having to tear that down what we just put in. So we're trying to go back and make sure we're good stewards of the district money. And then one of the things that at the very end, you see a purchase of a state vehicle. We didn't add that when we hired the last safety officer, getting them a vehicle. So we're actually that you allow us to buy a vehicle, a good vehicle from state surplus. We got a couple real nice Explorers for a real cheap price. The Tahoes you've seen them drive, we got those from state surplus. They're not new vehicles, but they're in really good shape mechanically, and they got a long history as far as mechanical maintenance performed on them. So we're real excited about that. So we're just asking, it'll be about $16,000 for a vehicle to support the safety officers. Pending any questions?
Do we have any questions? Ms. Huddle?
This actually might be a question for our CFO, but the list that you had prior to it's been a while, but anyway, there was a lot of money, I think, and I don't know how far back these go. I guess some of them go to 2016. But I was wondering if maybe we could get an update. So every year we approve the summer projects, but things happen and they don't all get spent. So it would kind of be nice to just have kind of a agenda item sometime after the summer on what was done and what wasn't done and what was left, just so we know.
That makes good sense, and we can talk about where to schedule that one. That way we'll know what went over budget we had to spend from, what could be reallocated, and then kind of give an update on the process of all the capital.
Do we have any other questions? Mr. Scully?
Clarification, is that different from what this chart is?
It is in that, I've been through two summer projects, and I'm sure that's coming up soon, Dr. Ross, where we'll do that. But what I didn't know was what didn't get done, and especially with COVID. So now we see it, but it's the first time I've seen it, and so I don't even know from like 2 years ago what didn't get done. So I think it'd just be nice for us as a board, if we're approving what's going to happen this summer, then sometime after this summer, we get a report of what actually got done. Some things may have been over budget, some things we might not have been able to finish for whatever reason.
Gotcha, thank you.
Dr. Ross, is this something that we're going to have on the action agenda for the next meeting?
Yes, ma'am, we would like to put it to the action agenda.
Okay. Is Ms. Huddle's question something that we could get before the next meeting to compare? I know she said after the summer. I just didn't know if you had a list. That would kind of be interesting to hear, to see before we vote on this at the next meeting.
So for clarification, this is 2016 to 2021.
So it'd be I guess maybe just asterisk these,
2022.
or which of these were, I'm losing track of time, which of these were 2021 items, right? So that would have been
I see, yeah. We can get that.
2020.
And what's this total? Does anybody know what the total is? I'm just curious.
I think we just ran out a lot of rooms in the slides. I think it's $756,000.
Okay. I don't add well in my head.
Well, I mean, a total would be helpful, and also kind of
A breakdown.
where we're going to reallocate to other projects, what the anticipated costs would be for the installation of the exterior door alarms, an estimate of the vehicles, things like that would be helpful when we, at least to have in writing before we vote.
Amen.
And
Yes, ma'am.
I think our next meeting is the 27th, so that's 2 weeks. Is that enough time?
That'll work, yes, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. Satterfield, do you have a question?
Yeah, I had a question. Dr. Ross, is there a certain amount of money that's allocated every year for capital projects?
Yeah, so we will do, for annual maintenance, we're going to do the $15 million bond sale for that. So that's where these will come from, and each year we'll bring that list to you for approval. And so some of these in 2016, I think we're over 10 million, and but these are all of that kind of uncaptured funds being wrapped up. That's why
Yeah.
this is listed so long. But going forward, we'll do it all off of 15 and then bring back to you every, I guess, at the end of the summer, more so in the fall, really, because they roll into the fall, what has been completed.
The reason I ask, I guess this is more of a two-part or maybe even a three-part question. In the past, I know that every principal put together their capital projects list, their request, so to speak, and then we got into a big boardroom and then we sort of duked it out on who was going to get what. But I know that the new principals are at a real disadvantage in understanding that and understanding the facility needs and the improvements. Mr. Wiseman, is there anybody that goes to those schools and kind of helps them?
We actually bring what we call our assessment team. Alan goes out there, myself, Jenny from IT, someone from the custodial staff. We all go to the school and we walk through with the facility manager prior to meeting with the principal. So they can point out what their needs are from their perspective. We can also identify some things that they may not catch. And then we sit down with the principal and facility manager and go through the list of some of the things, the needs and the wants. Then last month, we gave the principals a link so they could put in what their needs are or their wants, depending on your interpretation of that. And we're in the process of looking at those things. They put down a priority of what their first needs are, a second, so on and so forth. and then we'll roll that into the capital for next year. So,
Well, I was going to say, it is a learning process, and especially if you're a new administrator, just understanding about facilities is is a learning process too. So, just to help those new folks out, I'm glad that you all do that.
Yeah,
But it's a
we've
good
been-
idea to kind of walk through and say, well, you might want to consider this.
And we kind of looked at some of the things that previous administrations over the last year or two, that was their capital wish list, if you will. So we've kind of identified and walked through with, especially the new principals about that.
Sure.
The old guys, I shouldn't say that, the more seasoned principals know how it worked, but we wanted to get it in before we started looking at the capital, what the projects are. Typically, we would have that after the capital was already set. So hopefully now we'll be getting with Madison here soon and taking that list and putting some dollar figures to it, and then looking at the capital budget that we'll bring back to you for next year.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Wiseman? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Mr. Wiseman, when they turn the solar panels on, is that tomorrow? Will there be like a glow? How does that work?
I certainly hope not. That's probably not a good sign. But you should start seeing the meter go down.
Okay, awesome. We look forward to turning on the switch tomorrow. Yeah.
All right.
All right, Madam Chair, we have, we thank you for the board for the motion for the solicitation, but this time we would like Dr. Harris and Ms. Miller to come forward and just for the public's understanding, have a discussion about a proposed district-wide social-emotional learning program.
Thank you, Dr. Ross, and members of the board and general community. And in light of the vote in which we've made note of, this will be far more brief than what we originally intended. But prior to our giving a very brief statement or two in regard to a district-wide social-emotional learning program, I did want to take opportunity to highlight a couple of persons who are here who have been integral in terms of assisting with the process of identifying a SEL program, and they are here, many of which I think, or perhaps all of them which you perhaps know. I ask them to stand up. Tina McCaskill, our Director of Elementary Education, Ms. Nashonda Walters, our Director of Secondary Education, Principal Christian English, Seven Oaks Elementary, Ms. Beth Hook, who's our Coordinator of our Mental Health, Ms. Jessica Morris, who's the Assistant Principal at Emerald High School, and Ms. Jennifer Falco, who is our Coordinator of Parenting and Social Work. There are others who were unable to be here on tonight, but I do want to acknowledge them. They have been patient with us, and I do thank them for the time in which they have invested in the visits that they've participated in. This program, this idea, we have talked much about, and these are slides that we saw at our last presentation on the 27th of February, where we talked about, Beth Hook and Jennifer Falco talked about the models in which we have addressed in terms of prevention, intervention, and recovery. We talked a little bit about, and you've heard oftentimes Dr. Ross talk about the staggering statistics of direct services intervention that our school counselors, our clinical counselors, school social workers, and others who are on a daily basis. And these stats are stats that were in reference to, quite frankly, our first semester of school. So obviously at this point of the year, they've changed quite a bit, I'm certain. We talked a little bit about indirect interventions as well, things that we hear much of in terms of our code of conduct and our Stop It apps and other interventions by way of home visits that we are participating in on a regular and routine basis. There's also the recovery component of that, where we've heard again about Care Solace, our partnerships with the Care Solace program, our clinical counseling programs, within the three geographical areas of the district, as well as our partnerships with the Department of Mental Health Services in Lexington and Richland counties. Those are things that we do in terms of recovery. We also know that in terms of prevention, we continue to build upon in that area. I think that's the area that we heard some time ago where Dr. Ross, I think you said it almost like this, that we spent a lot of time in terms of interventions and recovery. Needed to spend a little more time and give a little more attention to the preventive factors. And with that being said, we do have a few that were listed there that we discussed on last week, the last board meeting rather. But we wanted to highlight, again, that which we've heard about earlier, and that is in terms of capturing kids' heart. And with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Mrs. Miller, who will talk a little bit more in depth about that.
All right, so in light of the vote for the solicitation, again, as Dr. Harris said, we'll be brief because we'll see what we get from that. But part of Capturing Kids' Hearts' mission with kids is to win their hearts and to lead them to their personal best. All of this is based on the State Department's definition of social and emotional learning. I won't read that to you as it's there and it's in the slides for the public, but social and emotional learning provides the skills that our students need for success in life and work. And that's that last sentence of that definition, and that is the definition that, that we will use in District 5 when we talk about social and emotional learning. On the South Carolina State Department of Education's website, they also have some more information about that and the research demonstrating that the students who do receive the support with social and emotional learning do better academically, socially, and behaviorally. So more reason why we need this preventive measure. The State Department of Education supports the CASEL 5, and we would do that as well. In any program that we seek to fund as a district-wide program, we would want to also address the CASEL 5, and you see those 5 competencies there before you. When we look at those definitions, and all of this is available on the South Carolina Department of Education website for each of those competencies. There, again, I will not read those to you. But one of the things that we notice in all of those is the verbs, so that students would have the ability to regulate, to recognize, to establish and maintain, to empathize, to understand, and to make constructive and respectful choices for themselves and for others, and in a variety of situations. So that will be important as we're looking to a district-wide model. These are specific to Capturing Kids' Hearts, the social contract, the Excel model, which is both for classrooms and for adults. So even in professional development or faculty meetings, they would follow the Excel model, and then student and staff affirmations. Again, part of their motto is to capture hearts, impact culture, and see change. And then these are just some of the results that comes from Capturing Kids' Hearts. I imagine these results would come from other social emotional programs as well, as they're all geared towards the same outcome. And finally, just another excerpt from the State Department of Education, that they are focused on promoting social and emotional learning to enhance the building of positive school climates and the healthy development of young people. Again, this slide is specific to Capturing Kids' Hearts, and that completes our presentation, and we'll stand for any questions.
Do we have any questions? Ms. Huddle?
If you go back to the slide, if you don't mind, where you had the outcomes. So is that something, as we do the solicitation, we can ask the vendors to give us like numeric values, like actual results of their programs? Or in other words, do you see us being able to measure all 5 of these areas?
I think that a program could and should be able to do that. I do know specifically that Capturing Kids' Hearts does that with the surveys that they provide and with their school visits, and they do have the hard data from those surveys. So yes, I do think that that could and should be a part of that.
I have a question kind of piggybacking off of that question. When we get that data, those data points, is there any way, and I don't know if in the RFQ that we asked this, but I know a concern is capturing programs like this on a district-wide level, as opposed to just like one school that has utilized a program, because this is something that I believe that the district would like to implement district-wide, so it would impact all of our schools. And so seeing those types of results on a district level may be different than just on a school-by-school basis. Is that something that is reasonable or obtainable?
Absolutely. I think we can put in a proposal and see what we get. But yes, I think any
Okay.
program that does that should be able to give that. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Anybody else have any questions? I have one more question, because you mentioned on your slideshow, the Department of Education's definitions and what they recommend from their website. I know that the Department of Education has a relatively new SEL department. Have we engaged with that department, and does that department come in and give recommendations, or does the State Department provide PD opportunities for districts? And if they do, are there typically costs associated with that?
Those are great questions. And yes, we have engaged with that office. And yes, they do provide. Now, they do not give recommendations for SEL programs, but they certainly provide supports for that. They have vetted some programs for screeners. In Act 213, there is recommended screening for SEL, and so they have recommended screeners for that, should a district choose to use that, but they don't actually recommend programs or anything. They do provide training. They do provide PD. It is free for all districts and schools in South Carolina. And we do have the name of who our regional coach or person would be. But yes, they would come out. Whatever SEL program we choose, they will come out and they will help us plan that PD and incorporate that PD all for free. They don't have a set presentation or program because they personalize it. So what the district wants, where the district wants to go, and then they help them to personalize that within those tenets of their definition in the Castle 5 and things of that nature.
Anyone else? All right, Mr. Scully.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you guys for your hard work on this. I know you've put a lot of time and effort into it. It's important, and anything we can do to address those issues, we need to do so. Piggybacking off of Ms. Blackburn-Hines' question, I know they can't recommend providers. They're, as a government organization, they're not going to favor any one over another. Can they provide a list of who has been used within other districts or schools in our state, or that we may help in us evaluating and finding a program?
So to my knowledge, they don't have an exhausted list of what schools are or aren't using, or districts are or aren't using, but certainly the districts who have contacted them and they've worked with, they are aware of those programs. And we have spoken very briefly about some of those. So yes, we could get some of that information from them. And one of the key parts I should have said to yours, Chair Blackburn-Hines, is part of their work with us would be also to incorporate that with our MTSS process, and to align with our the South Carolina profile of the South Carolina graduate. So that would help to do that. I know part of the concern has been, is this extra work on teachers? And so they would help us to see how that aligns with two things that we're already doing, two initiatives that we already have as well. But yes, they're willing to share and to provide us with the information that they have and they know.
And there may not be a whole lot of value there, I know, but it's more of a provide historical information and
Absolutely.
who they used.
Yeah, great idea. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions? All right, we appreciate it very much. All right, do I have a motion for item 20? Mr. Hogan.
I'd like to make the motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Do I have a second? Ms. Barnhart? Any discussion? All right, I call the question. All in favor? All right, that would be 8-0, because we had two hands down. 7-0. All right, meeting adjourned.